A lot of times when folks join the military, they join because recruitment's predatory. They need a job, the benefits and stuff. A recruiter showed up to my high school when I was 17 years old and offered me $12,000 if I signed up. For me, it's just after the '08 recession. I'm one of 6 kids. I'm 17 and stupid. Like, of course I said yes, you know.
How long have you been protesting for?
I don't know. I don't know when I wasn't protesting.
The U.S. Capitalist ruling class has a military to try to enforce its markets, labor, power, raw materials all over the world. Meanwhile, the people in general are getting losing their social network, getting poorer, while the rich are getting richer. And so this is the reason to oppose this military recruitment aim for the U.S. empire, which is not in the interests of most of the people who are here.
What really put me over the edge was being coworkers with IDF soldiers at a summer camp, though, and just hearing how they spoke about Palestinian people they had murdered made me realize we had dehumanized ourselves in the process of dehumanizing others.
Welcome in. Chicago's Air and Water Show has been going on since 1959, and it cost $88 in its first inaugural campaign. Now, in the year 2025, it just feels different.
Let me show you how much the United States spends on its military. Over here you've got Russia, China, India, and other big military powers. And yet, if you combine them all into one, the US still spends more.
The US has around 800 military bases around the globe. This map can't even show that many dots. These are just 200 or so dots to give you an idea of where these bases are clustered.
I mean, you look at Gaza and Ukraine, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all of their stocks exploded because of these horrific, catastrophic wars.
In the year following Russia's initial invasion of Ukraine, the stock price for General Dynamics rose nearly 34%. 1 year after the Hamas-led attacks on Israel, Lockheed Martin saw an increase of over 54%. And of course, the other top contractors benefited in their own ways too.
Well, the United States is the global arms supplier. The US supplies almost 50% of all the weapons on the planet.
Since 2001, the US has spent $14 trillion on war. Nearly half of that went to private defense contractors. Despite this massive price tag, the Defense Department has actually failed its financial audit 7 years in a row. In fact, 80% of expert witnesses who testify to Congress are actually paid by arms makers to lobby on their behalf.
All of this is a joke. It's all a show. So we, the taxpayers, subsidize the defense industry. The defense industry hires lobbyists to go and perform on the Hill and pretend like they're independent experts. And really, it's all just a big game, isn't it? And the joke's on us.
Many are calling out the hypocrisies of seeing their tax dollars go into the war machine instead of helping their neighbors, their loved ones, their communities, etc. The last time we had a budget report on this, it cost American taxpayers roughly 30 to 40 million plus dollars to put on, and that was 7 years ago. Ask yourself why these numbers are not public. When I decided to attend the Air and Water Show as a member of the media, what I wanted to get and capture were the emotions of those that were there protesting. There were veterans, activists, and many others who weighed in on what they saw. Here they are. Timmy, tell me about the sign.
The sign was made by 2 brothers, Catholic priests, about 15 or more years ago. And this sign has been in existence all this time. This whole panoply of weapons and air machines is simply a recruiting tool for the U.S. military. They want the people to be in awe and to really enjoy all this stuff and don't think twice about going into the military. I had 3 brothers. They're all deceased now. They all served in the military, and they were very honorable men, and they never held a gun. They never had to fight with a gun. The way things are now, America's just doing the wrong thing.
What do you mean by that exactly?
We're making trouble all over the world. Mm-hmm. We're making trouble in the Middle East. We're making trouble in China, let alone those poor Ukrainians. We set that up. It's not a good thing. We're not doing good things in this country, and both kinds of administrations, the Democrats and the Republicans, are doing the same thing.
Why do you think there's such a divide when it comes to that exactly, of calling out the war machine depending on who's taking the presidency and taking the White House?
Well, I'm not doing what I do on behalf of the Democratic Party. The Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans in terms of foreign policy. They're a little better in social policy, but they don't have much of a spine.
How long have you been protesting for?
I don't know. I don't know when I wasn't protesting.
What was your first protest? Do you remember?
The Vietnam War. But I wasn't really into it then. I was unsure. I came from a very conservative family. Took me a while. And of course my brothers had served in the military. I didn't see the military as so bad. But I found out later what our intentions were in Vietnam. You know, you have to educate yourself. You have to read, you have to study, and study history.
What was the point where, as you said, you came from a conservative household and then you sort of started thinking differently? What was that point for you?
When I was in high school. I mean, I learned a lot in high school and I learned a lot in college. I took a lot of history classes and I realized early on, but I never saw myself as a protester. You know, it was all up here, but I didn't know how to go out into the street. But eventually I found my way. And
how do you think, if any, the tide is turning on hyper-militarization in the country?
I think it is turning. I think young people have woken up and are starting to see this.
And what's your last message for anybody watching?
Fight war. Fight war. Wage peace. Wage peace. Do what you can. And if your congresspeople are hopeless, if your senator is hopeless, keep at it. Or fight harder for a replacement.
Or run.
Well, yeah, those who are in a position to do that, sure.
Have you heard about Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, who's running?
Yes, I have.
What do you think of her?
She's running in the district where I live.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that looks nice. She looks good. Personally, I'm a member of the Green Party. The Green Party has it all. It doesn't have just one issue. I mean, it started the green issue. It birthed it 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And we are anti-war. We were not allowed to get on the ballot. Literally, we're not allowed. The Green Party really is the only one that is in a position, it has the will to save this country from its militarism, from its greed, poor treatment of poor people. It is a disgrace that the richest country in the world has people living in the streets, and then Donald Trump wants to just sweep them away.
I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate you being out here, and I appreciate your umbrella. So thank you very much.
That's why you picked me.
What brought you out here today, man?
Well, I've been leafleting with Neil over there. He's with the Chicago Anti-War Coalition. Just trying to do my part in getting the word out, getting people aware, the awareness that needs to go out. It's really a crime.
What about doing your part speaks to you, and why is it so important to you?
Just as a human being, I'm also Muslim. I'm connecting them with the Palestinian struggle. I think the struggle needs to be inclusive as possible. Whoever wants to join it, you know, whether they're in the LGBTQ community, whether they're with the immigration rights, it's got to be inclusive as possible. This is at a different level of crime. I'm talking about what's going on in Gaza.
How do you feel about the war machine in full effect behind you as we're talking?
I remember the only time I went out to a protest is before the Iraq war got started. I went to maybe 1 or 2 protests, but after that, I never did any kind of activism like this. So this last 2 years, I would say it's really just woken me up. I just saw a rapper, Low Key, on YouTube.
Yeah, I know him.
And it was an older
British rapper.
Yeah, it was like a 13-year-old video from a while back. But some of the people that was on the video, they had Free Gaza. I mean, it's like those people knew, those guys that were in their 20s and they're rapping, they had awareness about what's going on in Gaza 13 years ago. They're wearing shirts, and I'm doing that on my bicycle. So that's nothing revolutionary right now, what I'm doing. It's like, I should have been doing that like 20 years ago.
It's better late than never, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's definitely.
Where do you get your news from? I'm curious.
I listen to, actually, just a lot of alternative media, like the Young Turks, Breakthrough News. You know, I was originally born in Iran. I was like 9 years old when my parents moved here. So I also just glance at some Iranian news, English news, press TV.
And what is your final message for anybody watching?
Please pay attention. This is at the least, it's billions of dollars going to Israel. They can't even fix the potholes.
Josh, what brought you out here today, man?
I can't, in good conscience, tolerate this war propaganda where everyone's just mesmerized at the machines we use to kill people. And I gotta oppose that we're killing people with these machines and sending them to Israel to use on kids in Gaza.
And which organization are you with?
Well, I just came as an individual who
Cool.
saw the About Face Instagram. I try to organize with Jewish Voice for Peace when I can, and I volunteer with them in Chicago.
Okay, cool. Are you Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay, me too. What was your moment where you either did not feed into the propaganda or just broke away completely?
In theory, when I learned about it, I went to a Jewish middle school that was very Zionist, and I learned about a two-state solution being the best option for peace, and it just sounded like separate but equal to me. I always knew that my community was very passionate about supporting this country across the world, and I don't know, it felt a little odd. What really put me over the edge was being co-workers with IDF soldiers at a summer camp, though, 2021, and just hearing how they spoke about Palestinian people they had murdered made me realize we had dehumanized ourselves in the process of dehumanizing others. And that was when I was firmly decided on being an anti-Zionist. I couldn't stomach what we were doing to Palestinian people, and I couldn't stomach what we had done to ourselves.
And how old were you when you heard those stories?
I would have been 19 or 20, and these same kids who were 19 and 20 were moving from Australia and the Bronx and England to pick up guns and kill Arabs. And it was these fellow 19-year-olds who were talking in this way, so brashly. And if they've grown up on that propaganda, I can't necessarily blame the individuals, but man, it's just horrific.
And how has it been, the reaction to your stances?
Well, my family is not pleased. They might have seen me on the news, a picture of me setting up an encampment in college, and
You go to Columbia?
I went to Northwestern last year,
yeah.
and I graduated a year ago, but was involved in some of these encampments, and they were, even before I went to college, they knew I was a little bit critical of Israel, and they kind of sat me down and said, son, you're gonna hear things about Israel, and you're gonna need to be careful to protect our community and make sure you don't slander our community, and all these things that they really don't like what I've done, and it just is what it is. I don't like what they have taught me, so we're at an impasse.
Do you have a relationship with them still?
We have a relationship. We're able to, thank God we're able to communicate, but it's hard. It's not always pleasant to know what they support versus what I support. I don't want to completely ice them out. How am I going to change anyone's mind if I absolutely refuse to talk to them?
On this sort of dais, where so many people are coming to celebrate the military, how do we reach these people to try and cut away a part of the defense budget in order for our lives to be that much easier in the country?
It's a good question, and if I had the answer, it wouldn't be 20 people protesting and 20,000 watching. Frankly, I think when somebody has come up to talk to me about it, I do try to relate that the struggles in Palestine are also the struggles that we face at home, right? We don't have free healthcare, free education. We don't have food for everyone on the table. Israelis do have all these socialized things, and yet they need our money for extra bombs, right? We don't like that ICE is surveilling people here at home using all this fancy technology. It's the technology that we give Israel to test on Palestinians. All of the things that we see in terms of all the issues of suppression and state violence at home are manifestations of what we give Israel carte blanche to do abroad. And I wouldn't say it in as many words, but yeah, just tying that the safety of Palestinians, the safety of Americans, the safety of Latino immigrants, right? The safety of everyone is interconnected. And it's not just an issue to worry about across the globe. It's an issue that everyone should worry about.
And what's your final message?
Free Palestine, and I want love and peace.
What's your name?
Alex Foss.
All right, Alex, why are you here today?
I'm here as a veteran that's against war, against imperialism, against the American colonial project, and these displays of American militarism, especially while we're using the military to occupy our own cities, and also backing and funding a genocide. I'm out here taking a stand against all of that, this asinine display, and this like huge wasteful a display that all this money that we're spending doing this could be used to better our communities, like, and especially like as a veteran, I got to plug the VA. You know, we just made a bunch of cuts to the VA and the unions and everything, and that money that's going for things like this, these displays, these grotesque displays, could be used to fund veterans care, fund Medicaid, Medicare, food, housing, etc.
Where did you serve?
I served in Virginia. I was on the USS Gerald R. Ford. I was in the Navy. She was when I got on that ship, she was still being built, and she was this huge multi-billion-dollar expense for a ship that we didn't need, that we still don't need. And she's chock full of all kinds of crazy tech. And she actually, after October 7th, she got sent out as a, like, hey, we're here as the American military, we're watching and stuff. So, which kind of it sat real heavy in the belly to see a ship that I worked on being used in that capacity.
How do you feel about the surveillance state, Palantir, Peter Thiel, etc.?
It's all garbage. There's so much of it that's just exhausting thinking about, and just kind of like, the more and more stuff that happens, the more, and like especially now, like recently we just saw like the federalization of DC, the DC police and everything, all of that. It's just, you get exhausted. It's hard to keep fighting the fight. But well, you know, we got to keep out here.
What was your point where you sort of had your light bulb moment politically that this is all kind of for nothing in building up the military-industrial complex and companies like Boeing and Raytheon just making money off of war?
I actually grew up as a military kid, and for me, there was no like real clear moment. I've always just been like both as like a military kid growing up and seeing the treatment that the families get and being like, wow. And then when I joined, knowing how much everything costs, how much they're spending and this, that, and the other, and when I was in being able to qualify for benefits. Those two things didn't mesh together. Like we're spending trillions of dollars on military budget, but I can't afford to buy my groceries and stuff. But it was just a lifetime. The military has been a part of my life for 32 years, my whole life of just, it's constantly been this shadow of impact and stuff. So there was really no like one clear moment. It's always just been like this next thing. What got me fully politically activated was finding my people, finding people who thought the same way, finding about face and finding other veterans that felt the same way and stuff, and seeing that, oh, okay, I'm not alone and carrying this crushing weight and stuff. So, but it's just been a lifetime of it, just like building up, and then it eventually just becomes too much to carry, and you just kind of, honestly, it was when I got out, the treatment I received when I was getting processed out, the reason I got out was like a mental health like crash out, essentially. I had some people who had my back, but my chain of command as a whole kind of let me down. Knowing what I was going through, knowing what some of my friends were going through, some of the friends I lost, and then getting just kind of dropped like that, it was just like, oh, that time that I gave was for nothing. Okay, cool. And then that kind of was like the last straw of a lifetime of it piling up.
How do we change the minds of so many people that are here to essentially glorify what we're seeing behind us?
They need to hear veterans' stories. They need to hear what veterans have to say about the atrocities they see when they get deployed, the atrocities they go through, the way they're treated. It's easy to support all this when it's just this cool display and you're so separated from what's going on. And if you don't really have any connection to military or veterans whatsoever, and not to say all veterans have like deconditioned, some haven't, like encouraging folks who have seen this stuff with their own eyes, encouraging them to talk, listening, giving them space to tell their story and hear the realities of what it's like when you're entrenched in the military-industrial complex, not when you're just an outsider to it. Like kind of breaking that facade that the U.S. has built up with this whole like, we got to support our military, we got to support our boys, this, that, and the other and stuff. And then also with that support, like when we bring folks back home and stuff, like recognizing that a lot of times when folks join the military, there's a lot of folks, especially nowadays, they don't join because of some sense of patriotism and honor and everything like that. They join because recruitment's predatory they need a job, and
The socialism involved in it.
yeah, exactly, the benefits and stuff. And so, like, in spaces that are very anti-military, we also need to make room for veterans, for the actual service members, for the GIs, the active duty reserves, all of them, to have space in those spaces to tell their story and, you know, decondition and everything like that and stuff. But like that's the tough thing about a veteran is like you come home and your benefits are cut and this, that, and the other, and you're like, okay, cool, but then you go try to like work with groups that are trying to help it, and oftentimes like there's a lot of times you get villainized because of what you joined, because you joined without realizing, like, hey, a recruiter showed up to my high school when I was 17 years old and offered me $12,000 if I signed up. And it was just after, like, for me, it's just after the '08 recession. I'm one of 6 kids. I'm 17 and stupid. Like, of course I said yes, you know? So just like leaving room for folks to tell their stories, to break that facade that it's not just like people, like, I didn't join because I wanted to go kill anybody. I didn't want to participate in war. I didn't want to do that. I joined because it was a job and I needed money. And the benefits, it's paying for my college right now. Like, you know, can't deny that.
What's your final message?
Free Gaza, quit defunding the VA, stand up for those who can't stand up, and help people stand up and fight the good fight.
What's your name?
Stan Smith. We've come here every year, most every year since the war in Iraq started, to protest the war in Iraq. And we were here for that, and then protest the war in Afghanistan, and then free Julian Assange and Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning. So we've come here many years to bring these issues to the public, educate people about what's going on with the U.S. government with these wars and why people here should be opposed to them and be organizing against, try to stop these wars.
Why do you think it's so important to use your voice?
Because if we don't use our voices, the government will just do what it wants. The only way to stop the government from its wars is to organize people, take action on their own behalf to change the situation. Because if people are going to wait to elect some new people or whatever, nothing is going to change. So it's only by people organizing themselves is it going to change anything to stop all the wars, which it gets worse and worse every year. The more money goes to the military budget and the more they cut services for the people, which is phenomenal waste of money. They're cutting all this money to Medicaid, and we have all these thousands of homeless people, and then we got hundreds of billions of dollars we spend on the military. For what reason? It's just a big subsidy for a lot of corporations. The only way we can change that is to organize people, make them aware of it, and organize them to start protesting in their own interests. People don't have medical care, they don't have affordable housing, they don't have good jobs, we got high inflation, all because of the military budget. Until that problem is solved, the social conditions of the American people are just going to get worse and worse.
And why do you think that is, that so many people maybe don't want to be reached or cannot be reached on this point of just cutting away the military budget to make American citizens' lives that much easier?
They would want to change, they just don't have the confidence that if they did anything, it's going to result in any change. We had the big protests against the war in Iraq with 1 million people or millions of people. It didn't stop the war. We had all the Occupy movement, which was a mass movement. That didn't result in anything. Then we had all the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016 for him to run for president, and that didn't change anything. So people don't see a road forward that they could take that would result in the kind of actions and changes that they want. So they don't do anything. But once people do see there's an actual alternative that is going to change things, then I think they will become active. Now, like, most Americans are opposed to the genocide in Israel, but U.S. government, whatever people do in the United States, it doesn't stop the U.S. government from funding it. Yeah, I can see why an average person will say, well, what's the point of protesting? That's the problem. That's the attitude people have, and things will be like this until that kind of attitude changes.
I'm curious, you said that you protested right here at the Air and Water Show for Iraq.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the reception there, and do you think it's changed to modern day in your eyes?
I think there was a fair amount of hostility in the beginning, especially when we brought up the issue of Afghanistan. But now people are realize more and more that the government's lying to them. Repeatedly, the government's lied about these things, and people realize the government's lying and they don't believe it. That's why corporate media doesn't have that much hearing nowadays like it did, say, when I was 30. And so people look for alternative sources of news, and even like people who used to be what I would call right-wing are even got the same kind of positions against wars that we have now.
Can the Democratic Party be reformed?
No, I don't think so. I don't think either of them can be. I mean, you can look at what happened with Bernie Sanders. I mean, he just submitted, but they basically blocked him from being elected in 2016, and he didn't do much about it.
What is your message to anybody watching that might be thinking slightly differently about the militarization in this country?
You mean who are just starting to think about?
Good timing.
Well, people, they start questioning and they'll start exploring things. I mean, each of us, when we were at once upon a time, like I can remember myself, I was a big patriotic supporter of the U.S. and when I was little, I wanted to join the military and I supported the war in Vietnam, and then I got to see, oh, what I'm being told is not true. And then I started finding out more about what the government was doing. Just like people just have to explore by themselves, and that's once they start questioning and stop just believing what they're told and start to question, then I think most of them will come to the good conclusions about what the war, how the U.S. supports wars all the times, and what needs to be done about it.
So Ken, what brought you out here today?
Well, this gross display of aggression, military aggression, that's wrapped as entertainment. Considering what's going on around the world and what the United States is funding, and other countries, when they hear that, it's usually followed by bombs. I've seen this in my entire life. I came out here as a young kid. I enjoyed it, basking in the sun. But after my experiences, realizing what I could have done, what I joined to do, I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's inappropriate on so many levels. One, it's just, like I said, what's going on in the rest of the world that the United States is funding, considering what's going on here in Chicago with, school budgets that need to be closed, the city's budget, which is far from being finalized, and then we're paying for this nonsense.
How do we reach more people in saying that the military budget should be slashed, just in essence to make our lives a little bit easier?
It's a really tough question. To operate within the system, you've got to work by getting progressives elected. Work towards what they did in New York. I think Brandon Johnson is the first step in Chicago in that direction. It's going to take generations, I think, to change what the machine here in Chicago has established. But it's going to be a long, hard struggle, but eventually, as long as people are made more aware and people continue to show opposition to this, that eventually people will come by. Just today, 99% of the people that came by were positive. 10 years ago when we did this, at the beginning of the invasion of Iraq, it was a much different story.
What would be your final message to anybody watching?
To get involved. Understand that there's other people out there, a lot of other people, that share these same feelings, or that things need to change in a positive direction, that we need to change, money for bombs and silly displays for school, to money for education, for housing, and also to take care of the veterans that are coming back and damaged from these wars of adventure that were completely unnecessary.
What brought you out here today, Neil?
Well, we've been active at the Air and War show, opposing it for years. Enough people give us a positive response that in that sense we feel it's worthwhile. Plus we try to educate other people as to the warlike nature and the recruitment nature of this show and to oppose it. We really should not have such a show in Chicago or anywhere else in the U.S. The U.S. Capitalist ruling class has a military to try to force its markets, labor, power, raw materials all over the world. Meanwhile, the people in general are getting losing their social network, getting poorer, while the rich are getting richer. And so this is the reason to oppose this military recruitment aim for the U.S. empire, which is not in the interests of most of the people who are here. And a lot of people who are here realize that, but they're here for the entertainment. But they also agree with us politically. We need to get active. We try to mobilize them for future activity.
How long have you been protesting for?
Well, I've been active since I was a kid. I was always opposed to injustice and racism and oppression, and I've always, as I say, since I was a kid, I've been active in doing that kind of thing.
Do you think public opinion has started to change?
In general, in our leafleting, our survey is that there are a lot of people who are opposed to the U.S. war effort. There are a number of people who are confused about it, and they stop and have discussion. We get very little argument opposing our view. The main thing is that a lot of people go by silently, and we ask them what they think all the time, and some of them say they don't want to think. It's too painful. But anyway, we try to encourage people to think and to see what the issues are.
And what are usually the questions if someone comes up? What do they ask you?
In the Middle East, they're so confused by the corporate media, they just don't know what's going on and what stand to take. And so we explain to them how the British Empire and the U.S. imperialism, starting in 1917 and before then, wanted to take over Palestine for their profits of the rich, for their interests, and it's been going on ever since, and the Palestinians have been resisting, and we support that resistance. We oppose the U.S. and the British Empire and anybody else interfering in other countries.
As a media member, I've been in the media professionally since 2011. When you say corporate media, what is your biggest gripe with their coverage?
Well, the corporate media continues to repeat all kinds of lies, such as that it was Hamas who started the issue on October 7th, whereas it's the British and the Americans who started kicking out the Palestinians, and Hamas is actually part of the united Palestinian resistance. And this is one example of how the corporate media keep repeating the same thing about Hamas and all those arguments, and that opposing Zionism, opposing Israel as anti-Jewish in some way. They keep repeating all that stuff.
And what is your final message today?
History shows that the main vehicle for change is huge numbers of people getting together, being active, insisting on an anti-war government, a democratic government of, for, and by the people, and that people should, if they agree, should see ways to be active, to have discussion with other people, and to get organized with us, because with the masses of people being active, that will change the situation.
Hannah, what brought you out here today?
Just generally not very happy with U.S. military force, the way it's being applied around the world, and I'm concerned about the future. I think there are much better ways to build an economy besides besides weapons, and I want to see peace, not war. I was a peace activist for many years in my early 20s, and I had stopped, but this recent incursion has brought me back out protesting again.
And what do you make of everybody who is out here celebrating and glorifying, essentially, not to borrow a term from a previous administration, but planes and bombers that are being used for massive destruction?
I think it's horrendous. People need to have the consciousness to understand how these planes and how these bombs affect civilians in other countries. We're basically slaughtering people in Gaza. There's wars happening in Sudan, and indirectly the U.S. is involved in all of it.
And what would be your message to anybody watching?
Think about what's happening. Think about how our government is contributing to the suffering of other people. Think about ways to make peace, not war.
If you appreciate these interviews that I am going out and getting, please do me a favor by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing for free, and even sending a super chat my way. Thank you so much. Have a great day.